With the full release of College Football 26 coming out today, what better time to talk about what you need to do to put yourself on the best path to success in your dynasties, whether that's online, whether that's your offline solo one. You need to put yourself in the best position to succeed. And today, I'm going to walk you through your different pathways and different options because there's no one best way to do it. And why is that? Because you may be looking for something different in your dynasty than somebody else. So the first thing we're going to do is look at what every starter coaching archetype gives you, because that is the most important thing in College Football 26, especially early on, because until you reach level 10, you cannot put points anywhere else. And so this is going to be the key to figuring out where you want to start. So starting off in Motivator, so as we can see, the first one is interest boost for QB recruits when a current QB hits a skill cap. This one is honestly not that big of a deal, but if you go to offensive linemen, because there are 5 of them, anytime that an offensive lineman hits a skill cap, which is probably going to be quite frequently, you will have an interest boost for offensive lineman recruits. Now, when you put it that way, it looks really cool. So for quarterback, because there's only going to be 3 or 4 on your depth chart at any given time, it might not be as big of a deal. But when you talk about wide receivers and tight ends, offensive linemen, and any other position besides maybe running back, you're looking at potentially huge interest boosts. So you got to think about that because that's going to be your initial unlock. And then you get into the more game side of things with the tier 2. So your DBs will stay hot through timeouts, quarter changes, and across games. Again, this one's not huge for me. The hot and cold system is done fine. It just isn't. It isn't something that I view as a necessary thing for you to be able to grab in your, when you're upgrading your coach. Now, the big one is the off-season training boost. Again, this year it doesn't feel like it actually has that much of a tangible difference, and I don't know why that is. Well, it seems good in practice. It honestly, it's a middle tier ability because you still it doesn't feel like there's a massive boost, but there might be at least a little one. You at least see more consistent progression with those players in that skill position. So you have to, you have to think about that when you get to that tier 3. Is it really worth it to get to tier 4 where you're starting hot in close games? Again, it's the same thing as tier 2. Does that matter a ton when you talk about your overall archetype of your coach? And then when you try to get to tier 2, you need to have 5 players drafted in order to unlock it. Honestly, not that hard to do. Now, if you are starting at a smaller school, that's going to be kind of difficult. If you're starting at a mid-tier school, or if you're starting at a high-tier school, this is going to be very easy for you to do. So it's something else that you have to think about is being able to get to that second tier because you see what you're able to unlock here with those ability points. So you get quick recovery, so you recover wear and tear damage faster. That is a massive bonus, and one that honestly is worth this tier alone, just purchasing that Master Motivator tier. And this second one, given what we've seen so far, is huge. Wide receivers and tight ends are less likely to transfer. Honestly, because of these first 2 that we see in the Master Motivator tier, Motivator is a very, very, very enticing option when you're starting your dynasty. Now, this is going to come later down the line because, remember, you have to unlock the requirements for Master Motivator, so you need those 5 players drafted. Then you also need the points to be able to hit those thresholds to buy the abilities. But once you do, you're talking about having a coach where your guys aren't going to transfer as much, and then you get to tier 3, and you're increasing all XP gains for that position. That's phenomenal because you're going to have more skill points to use to upgrade those players. The composure boost in tier 4 isn't a huge deal, but the fact that your first 3 tiers in Master Motivator are all super productive and awesome, I guess is the best way to describe it. Abilities, this is something that you can, pulls you to Motivator almost right away. Now, as we head over to Tactician is interesting because in the deep dive for Dynasty, the blog mentioned how Tactician actually allows you to get more skill points over time if you win. Now, that's the big caveat. If you don't win, you're going to see less skill points than you would in Motivator or Recruiter. So you have to think about that, right? But having in-game boosts is a pretty big deal when you look at quarterbacks. So your first tier isn't great. Your boosts to throw on the run and change of direction. Throw on the run's great. Change of direction, not so much. Throw under pressure and break sack. Now those boosts, you got me, thinking a little bit about it. And then you get to spin, juke, and ball carrier vision. If you have a mobile quarterback, that's awesome. If you don't, this isn't going to be much of a pull for you. But it's that tier 4, right? It's the short and medium accuracy boost that's going to be massive for you, because I suppose this is more so if you're in an offline dynasty doing some of the house rules that I've talked about, this would be big. If you're just doing regular, online dynasty, or you're doing your own and you're not using, you're using either the placement and accuracy where it's all about you and your timing, then that's not going to matter as much. But if you're doing something where the quarterback's accuracies actually matter, that's a huge plus. When you look at running backs, so the run block and pass block doesn't really matter. Trucking and break tackle, however, that's a big one. Spin, juke, and ball carrier vision, that's a big one. Catch and short route running, not so much. So for the running back, it's really tier 2 and tier 3 that you'd go for Tactician. You probably wouldn't need to upgrade that tier 4 at all. I mean, unless you're somebody who really likes to run their running backs in the passing game, then go for it. But I think you would just find guys that can catch the ball and have that good short route running. For wide receivers, you get boost to run block, power run block, finesse, and also tight ends, by the way. That is bigger than you would think, because there is nothing more frustrating than when you're trying to run to the edge and your wide receivers cannot hold up on the block. Now, this is going to help them do that. It's not going to be a huge boost, but it's going to be enough to make a difference. And then they get juke and spin. So you talk about that yak ability, right? If you got guys that are good physical presences, but they need a little bit more to be good yak threats, there you go. Then you get boost to short and medium route running. Okay, now we're talking. And then boost to catch and traffic. The wide receiver upgrades and tight end upgrades are probably some of the best you're going to find in the Tactician tree, because all 4 of them are going to impact you pretty nicely. Then you move over to offensive line. I mean, the offensive line, again, kind of like the wide receiver, all of these are huge. I would 100% recommend at whatever point that you get Tactician, upgrade your offensive line first. And I know that some people are going to be drawn to other position groups, but I am telling you right now, the first thing you need to do is upgrade your offensive line blocking tiers. 100%, those should be your main area of focus. For the defensive line, you're talking about change of direction and pursuit. Not a huge deal. Now, finesse move and block shedding in that tier 2, that's massive. Tier 3, you're talking about power move and hit power. Again, that's huge. And then in 4, it's tackle and play rec. Play rec is nice. Tackle's not a huge deal, right? Because when you usually get to the quarterback, tackle's not going to hinder you if you have too much, if you have a low tackle rating. You're going to get there and you're going to make the sack more times than not. But those middle two are very nice. So like the running back position, the second and third tier are going to be where you're focusing a lot of your time. And then that 4th tier for play recognition is nice, but it's not a huge necessity. At linebackers, it's finesse move and block shed. Block shed is so big for the linebacker position. You absolutely should be focusing on that. Pursuit and play recognition, again, huge. Do not forget to look at play rec. Play rec is massive because it's going to help awareness, or it's going to help counteract low awareness. But if you combine it with awareness, a high awareness and a high play rec, your linebacker is going to make a lot of plays. Boost to man coverage and zone coverage, we always love that, especially because in 25, I don't know if it's the case in 26, but it felt like run stopper linebackers always upgraded much better than pass coverage or field general. That's a nice boost to have then, right? Tackle and hit power in tier 4. So again, you cannot go wrong with upgrading your linebackers. It's not a super important position overall, but having good linebackers, you definitely notice when you have good linebackers versus when you have bad, but you can kind of get away with having those middle tier linebackers as opposed to, when you're on the offensive line. If you don't have the top end talent, you will feel it. When you get to the secondary, boost, spin, and to jukes and ball carrier vision, that doesn't matter. That is literally for after you pick the ball off. I do not care about that. Catching and jumping, that is nice. It is nice to have, but I would rather have that man coverage and pursuit and then zone coverage and play recognition, those two. So we haven't really seen this before, but Tier 3 and Tier 4 are going to be the big ones that you want to get in Tactician because of what they can do for your cornerbacks and their ability to cover, man and zone. And then we get to the kickers. Now, this is honestly one that if you do go down the Tactician route, and I didn't look at this for Master or for Motivator, but we can go take a quick peek at it because it's the same things and it's staying hot and off-season training boosts. I'm not too interested in that. If I were to go Motivator, I probably wouldn't focus on that tier too much. However, if I go Tactician, a boost to kick accuracy, an extra boost to kick accuracy, and the same thing for kick power, I mean, that's massive. I don't know how much the boost is, but if you're talking you can give me 4 or 5 more kick accuracy points or kick power points, I'm absolutely taking that 100%. Now, the thing I love about this unlock requirement is that you only have to win 8 top 25 games. This could be tough depending on when you do play those games, right? So if you are playing at a small school where you're just not seeing too many top 25 opponents, and even when you do early on, you're just not ready to face them, you're going to see that unlock requirement might be a little bit harder to get. If you're playing at a mid-tier power, or not a mid-tier, but a low-tier power 4 school, this is kind of awesome because you're going to have a lot of opportunities to get those done. Even early on in your dynasty, when it does feel like a struggle, you're going to be able to steal some games because, it's going to happen. You're going to pull an upset every once in a while. And so if you are able to win 8 of those, well, then all of a sudden you can get in that second tier of Scheme Guru, and we'll talk about what that gives you in a little bit. And if you're playing at one of those high schools, you're going to have the ability to do that so easily early on. And 8 is really not that hard because if you consider the fact that when you get to the college football playoff, if you do, you will face a minimum 1. But if you make it to the national championship game, that is 4 opponents in the top 25 that you will play. If you win the national championship, that's 4 right there. So it becomes much easier to get that than you would really think. So the cool thing about the Scheme Guru in Tactician is that it's more so focused on your team as a whole rather than the specific positions. So you see fast tempo offense, which means your offensive players will fatigue slower and hurry up, which is really nice if you are trying to be a up-tempo offense because that fatigue will kill you. It's an increased delay to defenders looking to the sideline at the snap. That's going to give you a massive advantage in play. Team composure boost for first down gain, running hurry up. Again, it's just a little thing that I'm not too big of a deal to me, but it might be nice to have. And then a chance to see the defense's cover shell in hurry up. That is huge. To be able to know what shell they're in at least before the snap is massive, and it would cause me to run hurry up quite a bit. For the passing game offense, you get increased catchability on passes 10 yards or less. Huge. And then it goes up to 20 on the tier 2. And then you go to tier 3, and it's anywhere on the field you get increased catchability. I mean, that's a phenomenal upgrade to have. We see you, so it's a chance for post-snap blitz detection. So that is essentially having the field general mental ability with any quarterback. And that is a massive addition to your team. When you talk about the ground and pound offense, the D-line takes a fatigue hit for every 4+ yard rush. Your opponent is going to hate you if you're able to run the ball on them. D-line and linebackers take a fatigue hit for every 4+ yard rush. So that would be basically the first 2 levels of the defense. The front 7 are going to be tired, not tired, but they're going to take a fatigue hit and have to rotate out quicker if you run for 4 yards on a given play. Imagine if you just string together 4 yard, 5 yard, 6 yard run, 5 yard run, and you just march down the field. Eventually, they're going to have their 2s in, and you're going to be able to break one, and eventually you're going to score a touchdown, right? And then you reduce the defender's ability to shed run blocks on that last one. Again, are you kidding me? That's huge. The ground and pound defense, so your D-line will fatigue slower on run plays. Same with the linebackers in tier 2. And then you get an increased ability to disengage on run plays on tier 3, which is huge. And then in tier 4, you get a decrease in the time between block shed attempts, which again is just a huge bonus for your run game defense. Now, your pass game defense, you get an increased knockout chance on 10 passes 10 yards or less. Then it goes all the way up to tier 3, where it's anywhere on the field. And then in tier 4, you get a chance for protection from post-snap blitz detection. So this one is only going to be big if the opposition has field general at the quarterback position, or if they have the same tier 4 thing unlocked for their offense. Not huge. Wouldn't be on my top priority list if you do unlock Scheme Guru. And then you get to the fast tempo defense. So your defenders fatigue at a slower rate. You reduce delay for defenders looking to the sideline to snap. So this is the same thing as we saw on the offensive side of the ball. So if you are having to deal with a lot of hurry up, this might be something you go after. I think that the tier 1 is really all you need, to go after. I don't think the other ones are huge unless you are in that situation where you need to, think about just slowing down those guys. So then you get to recruiter, and so what it's going to be is essentially all these tiers will look the same at every single position. So at tier 1, your position that you're focusing on is going to take less time to fully scout. Now, depending on what kind of dynasty you're running, this is either going to be big, this is not going to matter too much to you. And then in that second one, you'll get increased starting interest from that position group, which is very nice. It makes it so that you have less to do to get to a recruit's top of the list. And then you get to tier 3 where transfers are more interested. And then you get to tier 4 where your sway chance has more of an ability to work. So that is how it works through every single position in the recruiter tier. Now, when you get to, I believe it's master recruiter or something like that, and you need to have 2 top 25 or 2 top 5 classes in order to unlock it. So this is a very tough tier to unlock within the recruiter skill tree. But it gives you a boost to ideal pitch grades for quarterbacks, for any position, I should say. You get my school grades that have larger impacts on that position group. Your recruiting actions have much bigger impacts on that position group. And then you get increase in weekly hours for that position group. So again, a lot of those we saw in that just base recruiter tier last year, which is why it felt like recruiter was the easy way to go in 25, but is not so much in 26. And I'll explain why. So the base level tiers are fine. I'm not too worried about being able to fully scout a player. And to be able to see if they're a gem or a bust is nice. But to me, it's not a huge deal for most situations. When you get to the tier 3, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, again, I'm not pulled to those because yes, you have more interest, but you still have to close the deal on your own with 50 skill points available to you in my school grades that aren't very good. So really what it comes down to for the recruiter tree is how quickly will you be able to unlock master recruiter or whatever it's called. Because if you're able to do so quickly, these tiers of abilities are some of the best that you can have in this game. Because it's going to give you better players so you don't have to worry about, like with Tactician or with Motivator, having those boosts to specific ratings or giving those off-season boosts, because you're just going to get good players right off the rip. But you have to have 2 top 5 classes in order to do so. And that's where it becomes a problem, right? Is that if you have to, spend 50 points in recruiter, but then also sign 2 top 5 recruiting classes, it is going to be nearly impossible for you to reach this unless you are one of those top tier schools, because you just don't have the resources available to you to do so. And the reason why your initial decision is so important is because whatever path you decide to go down is going to be unlocked already. So you won't have to spend any extra points to unlock it. But on your second go, whenever you try to unlock something else, it's going to be 20 points. And then if you try to unlock something else, it's going to be 30 points. And then it's going to continue to go up and increase as you try to unlock these things. So you have to know what your plan is ahead of time. If you're in a dynasty where you're starting off at a smaller school, it just doesn't make sense to start at recruiter, because you're not going to see the major benefits until you sign 2 top 5 recruiting classes. The first thing in recruiter does not matter to me. Like, these are nice, but they're not important. Elite recruiter is where you start to see, oh my gosh, this is going to drastically improve my ability to get recruits. This stuff is not. Okay? This stuff does not matter to you. And so even though you want to, because it feels like you're going to help yourself, you're really not helping yourself. And then you want to, we got to focus on, now we have to look at the in-between archetypes. So your talent developer, your strategist, and your architect. Those are going to be other key ones that you want to focus on, because the way that you should do it is that you figure out which two base archetypes are best for you to get to a point where you can unlock that combo archetype. So architect, talent developer, and strategist. So honestly, it wouldn't be a bad idea to figure out which one of these three is what you want the most, because that way you can then pick out the two that you need to unlock in order to get there. So let's look at those next. So a talent developer, you get a bonus in XP for QBs when QBs are drafted. That's nice. That was in the Motivator tier last year, but how much of a bonus in XP is it? We don't know. It worked out nicely last year, and this is just when they're drafted. It doesn't even say when they're drafted, so that's something to think about. Freshman and sophomore at that position progress faster, so that's nice. Your starting position group at that position will gain XP faster. Okay, now we're talking. And then you get a boost to pipeline bonus for those specific positions. Again, very nice. But when you look at what it takes to unlock this archetype, you are talking about 2 players being drafted in the first round. Do you know how hard that is if you don't have on day one somebody that is capable of being a first round draft pick? Because you need high ratings, and you really need high ratings. The way they play really doesn't matter. So you need somebody who is a mid to high 90 overall in order to be drafted in the first round. Those are the guys that get drafted in the first round. It has nothing to do with the stats. So that is something you have to take into account. Now, we go over to strategist. You get a boost to complimentary visits with those specific position groups. That's nice. Because the idea is you want to have complimentary visits because they're just going to give you natural boosts to your visits. So why not get an extra boost, right? Now, visits have bigger impact on those position groups. That's big. That's a nice plus. They have a lower deal breaker threshold. That is also big, because deal breaker thresholds are going to be a driving force in transfer portal. So this is a way to lower the chance to transfer initially. Just have that deal breaker be lower. And then you get an increased chance to learn dev trait while scouting. This is a nice one. And I will say that if you are, down the road and you want to be able to learn what a guy is going to be on day one, then this is nice to have. But it's tier 4. And you have to do that at every single position. So it's going to cost you a lot of points. And by the time that you get all the points you need to be able to see the dev traits at all of these positions, you're going to be talking about, depending on if you're on, normal, fastest coach progression, you're going to be talking about probably 10, 12 years down the line. If you're on slowest, good luck even getting to this point. And then the unlock requirement for this is much easier when 4 bowl games. Again, if you make it to the college football playoff, you have the chance to do, I don't know if the first round is counted as a bowl game, but the second and third rounds are, and then the obviously national championship. So there's opportunities to do this quite quickly. This is not going to be a tough one to unlock. At minimum, you can do it as soon as, I believe, 2 years. It could take you to get the requirements to unlock this. If you're doing a slow rebuild, it might take you a little bit longer, but we're only talking about 4 seasons, in the grand scheme of things, that you need to win a bowl game. So it's not like it's going to be super tough to do. And then you go over to Architect, which is the last one we'll talk about. So, and this is why and we'll get into it in a little bit, but this is why I feel so good about this pathway, because your position group earns an XP bonus for every 3-game win streak you have. 3-game win streaks are not uncommon in Dynasty. Like there's a really good chance that, especially the further on you get, when you can actually unlock this tier, you get to that point. Then you get additional XP for in-game goals. So every time that you throw for 250 yards, you throw for a touchdown, your quarterback is going to get additional XP onto what he would already get. You also get a chance to increase a random skill cap when leveling up. So anytime that player gets enough XP to level up, there is a chance that one of their skill caps increases. That you're talking about an extra 2 to 3 ability points in all of those columns that it lists under that specific position. That is huge when you talk about that. So if you're talking about a player who, is a little slower than you would like, once they level up, they have a chance to increase that quickness one to then work on speed and acceleration. How awesome is that? And then that last one is a chance to increase your best skill cap with a conference or national title. So the national title part is not huge, but the conference one is. And if you're telling me that there's a chance to increase my best skill cap twice in a season if I win the conference and the national title, man, that's a nice one. That's a really nice one. All you need to do to unlock Architect is win 4 rivalry games. That's it. That's all you have to do. Do you know how many rivalry games some teams play in a single season? 3. You're physically not going to have enough points to buy Architect until after you've already done this twice over, probably. Like, you're going to naturally beat your rivals probably 12 times by the time that you can actually afford to buy Architect. That's crazy to think about. So if your goal in a dynasty is to take a small school program and build them up, the recruiter pipeline is not for you, because that stuff is not going to matter to you, and you're never going to have a top 5 recruiting class. I shouldn't say never. You are highly unlikely to have a top 5 recruiting class in the 10 years that you run your dynasty. Let's be honest. Let's be honest with ourselves. How long is your dynasty going to last? Because I bet it lasts less than 10 years. On average, you are not playing your dynasty for longer than 10 seasons. Having a recruiter archetype makes no sense. Makes no sense, because by the time you actually get to a point where you could unlock elite recruiter, you're going to be in year 20. There's just no way in 10 seasons that you're going to have 2 top 5 recruiting classes, given how well the CPU recruits at those top schools. Now, hear me out. If you start at one of those top schools and have a feasible chance at getting a top 5 recruiting class early on in the dynasty, 100% recruiter is your best way to go, because that tier, that elite recruiter tier, is overpowered in what it gives you. You get a boost to ideal pitches. You get my school grades having a larger impact, recruiting actions that have a larger impact, and you get to increase your weekly hours on that position group. Yeah, that you are going to turn your dynasty into what's bigger than a dynasty, because that would be what it is. So again, this is why I say you have to know what the goal of your dynasty is. If you're online, I would not touch recruiter. If you're playing in an online dynasty, I would not touch recruiter, because let's be honest, your online dynasty is not going to last longer than 7, 8, 9 seasons. There are some people who are in smaller groups that might be able to get through more, but this isn't going to matter. This stuff is not going to matter. You're not going to get to a point where you can, especially with the talent developer, you're not going to have 2 players drafted in the first round. And even if you do, how many more seasons are you going to play where these are actually worth it? Because you're talking about 2 first-rounders drafted. And this is, again, this depends on what kind of online dynasty you're in. If you're in one where you guys are all starting at small schools, I wouldn't do it. It just doesn't make sense. Now, if you're starting at mid-tier schools, high, you could pick anybody, absolutely go for it. Like, there's no reason not to. You can have something bigger than a dynasty. But it comes down to, if you're not, there's no way that you are going to play all 30 seasons that they allow you to play. On average, there are some people that will. On average, you're not playing all 30 seasons. So given that, why would you do anything other than Motivator or Tactician? Because unlocking Architect is going to give you things that actually matter and will tangibly help you every single week. And by having Architect, you're also likely to have Master Motivator. You're also likely to have Scheme Guru. And in my opinion, Tactician, because of what Scheme Guru gives you, is the best way to go. Because as good, and it's the easiest to obtain, in my opinion. Because what you have to do to, get through the things that I think actually matter into Motivator is to get in the Master Motivator branch. You have to have 5 players drafted. Now, again, you could have 5 players drafted in the 7th round. when is that going to happen if you're starting at a small school? Later down the line, right? When you actually have the points to be able to upgrade these tiers. Right? Immediately on day one, no matter what school you start at, Tactician is going to help you. It is going to make your team better. You win 8 top 25 games, which, again, if you're talking about an online dynasty, is going to happen because of how many people in your dynasty will likely be in the top 25. So this is going to be super easy to get to. And then you're going to tangibly help yourself on the field with Scheme Guru. And then Archetype is the easiest one to unlock because all you have to do is win rivalry games. You have to win 4 of them. That's it. You have more than 4 rivalry or more than one rivalry game a year. You could do this in year 1. And then you're getting additional XP. You're getting a chance to increase a skill cap or their best skill cap. So that's why I think that if you're starting at any school outside of the major blue bloods, it makes 0 sense for you to be a recruiter. Do not do it. Do not waste your points because it's a lot of points that you will be wasting. Be a tactician or be a motivator. If you are starting at a small school, I would recommend being a tactician because it's going to help your awful, awful team right away. And then you can use those points that you eventually get when you level up to get into Motivator, spend however many points you need to in this Motivator-based branch to get to Master Motivator, to get to that area where your position groups are less likely to transfer, because that's going to be the big one. This is the poll for Motivator. As nice as it would be to get an off-season training boost, the biggest thing that you can possibly get in the Motivator tier, given what we've seen so far, is to have your players less likely to transfer. And then you look at tier 3 where everybody gets XP gains, an increase to them. And you look at tier 3 where everybody gets an increase to XP gains. Everybody in that position group. Depending on how quickly you can get to Master Motivator, it should determine what branch you end up starting with. Because if you feel like you can have 5 players drafted, go ahead and take Motivator. Because having this Master Motivator top 3 tiers is going to be massive for you and your team. If you don't think you can do that, if you don't think you can have 5 players drafted that quickly, there is no reason that you shouldn't be going Tactician, because I have a very good feeling that within 3-4 years, you will be able to unlock Scheme Guru, and those are going to help you, in my opinion, more than Master Motivator will. Again, realistically, you're not playing long enough for Program Builder and CEO to matter, so don't even worry about saving those points. Make sure that your team is as good as possible. And I would, again, start with your offensive line. Your offensive line is the most important thing on the football field. Start with them. It's going to make your life so much easier. It's going to help you win football games, which is going to help your XP increases, which is going to help, this is what I'm trying to talk about. So really what it comes down to when you are deciding what path you want to go down, because you can't unlock anything else until you're at least a level 10, you need to know how long the dynasty is going to go on for, likely. And you have to know what your goal is in that dynasty. If it's to compete and win right away, recruiting is not going to help you in the way that it did last year. What is going to help you is either Master Motivator or Tactician. I lean Tactician because it's instant day 1 impacts. Whereas if you do get Motivator, it only boosts when your current position hits the skill cap. And then the other big one is the tier 3. So it only takes into effect the off season. With Tactician, every single game, you're going to have these boosts. And these are boosts that are going to help you win those games, which in turn is going to give you more XP to be able to spend. And that's why I think if you are a good player and you'll be able to win football games, Tactician is the way to go. It gives you a higher ceiling in terms of how much XP you actually earn. If you're in an online dynasty, that is going to be the biggest separator outside of your skill in the game. And that is why I advocate so fervently for Tactician as your starting point. Now, you can listen to me, you cannot listen to me, but I really, truly believe, because you're not going to play long enough for these meta builds that you see on YouTube, you're not going to play long enough for those to actually matter. This is your realistic coach build for how long you're actually going to play this specific dynasty. If you start hopping teams, then you can talk about, okay, maybe I can do recruiter. Like if you start at a small school and your goal is to make it to a bigger school, maybe recruiter is a possibility for you. But if you're just planning on staying at that small school the entire time, you're very unlikely to have a top 5 recruiting class for you to ever see the benefits of that second tier. So that's why I think Tactician or Motivator is a better way to go. That is all I have for you today. Remember to hit that subscribe button on your way out. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Catch you on the flip. See you.